Good morning. Today we are going to analyze a problem question on registration title. This video content has been made available for informational and educational purpose only. Kindly go through the disclaimer completely. Let's start with the problem question. The Polly purchases the registered freehold title of Retreat, a country hotel, from Verne for 1.5 million pounds. Retreat includes a hotel with a separate living quarters, the extensive grounds, and a number of outbuildings. Polly did not visit the retreat before buying it, only viewing it online. When Polly arrives at the retreat for the first time, she meets a Walter, a neighboring farmer, driving his tractor through the hotel grounds to reach some of his fields. Polly is startled when William tells us that he has a right to do so. Later that day, the Polly finds Clem in one of the outbuildings which he is using as part of his gin making business. Clem shows a Polly a document that gives him a 6-year lease of the outbuilding. The document also contains a provision allowing him to buy the registered freehold title of the building at any time during the currency of his lease. Polly returns to retreat where she meets Bianca, Vern's daughter. Bianca, a teenager, is unpacking her luggage in one of the bedrooms in the hotel's living quarters. Bianca points to all her clothes in the wardrobe and the person belonging on the dressing table and tells Polly that she had lived at retreat since Vern bought it 5 years ago. Polly is surprised. She shows Bianca an email on her mobile phone from Vern replying to her inquiry about the belongings, which she had seen in online photographs of the room. Vern's email says that all those things belonging to my doctor who has gone away. Bianca is just back after spending a year studying in Paris. Bianca also tells Polly how had used the monetary prize from a children's TV backing competition to help Vern buying the retreat. We have to advise Polly, and as well, how would our advice will differ about Bern's right differs if Polly's purchase of the freehold title to retreat could be governed entirely by the rules of the unregistered land law. Hence, we have to analyze both this question when it is registered and when it is not, and when it is unregistered. Right of the Walter, the farmer's right of way. Walter claims a right to drive his tractor through the hotel grounds. This may be an easement or a right of way. Walter claims he has a right to drive through the hotel grounds under the principle of registered land. If right is an easement that is legally established and registered, it would bind Polly as a new owner. Schedule 3 of the paragraph 3 of LRA 2002 allows certain easements to override registered dispositions if they have been exercised within the last 12 months are known to the transferee or obvious on a careful inspection. In Abe National BS versus Can, the court emphasized the importance of actual occupation and the visibility of rights. If Walter's right of way was not registered but has been exercised, it could be deemed an overriding interest. It was established that unregistered interest must be in the public domain to bind a purchaser. If Walter easement is not registered, Polly may have a strong argument. Walter claims the right to drive his tractor through the hotel grounds. Under the law of the Property Act 1925, especially the section 27 and 29, any legal interest affecting the land must be registered to bind a purchaser of a registered title. If Walter's right is an easement, it should have been registered to be enforceable against Pali. If it is not registered, a party may not be bound by this right, especially as she is a bona fide purchaser. The case of Williams versus Glines Bank versus Bolland emphasizes the significance of overriding interest. If Walter right is not registered but he has been exercised for longer period, it might qualify as an overriding interest. Under the Schedule 3 of LRA 2002, police should verify if the water right has been recorded or if it based on the actual use. So the Pali may need to investigate further to determine the validity and registration of Walter's right. If it is an established easement, it might bind her despite her lack of prior knowledge. We move on to the second point, the right of the claim, the lease of outbuilding. A claim shows a party a document indicating he has a 6-year lease for the outbuilding along with an option to buy. A claim has a 6-year lease for the outbuilding, which includes a right to purchase the freehold. So the section 27.2 of LRA 2002 states that the leases over 7 years must be registered to be effective as legal interest, but leases under the 7 years may be protected by notice or could be overriding interest. In City of London, BS versus Flag, the court recognized that the equitable interest can bind a purchaser if they are the actual occupiers. In Chowdhury versus Vyas, the court highlighted that actual occupation can lead to overriding interest even if not registered. A party must determine the claim's occupation status and whether he has registered his lease. So Pali should check if claims lease is registered. If it is not, and if he is in an actual occupation, his lease may still bind her as an overriding interest under the Schedule 3. A right to purchase may add complexity, but if he has an enforceable lease, Pali must respect it. A third point of right of Bianca, the occupational claim. Bianca claimed to have lived at retreat since Vern's purchase, indicating a potential beneficial interest in the property. Bianca claims to have lived at retreat or has the personal belongings there. Relevant laws or Section 33(5) of the Family Act 1996 provides protection for spouses and cohabitants, suggesting that Bianca may have a beneficial interest based on her occupation. Additionally, Section 40 of LRA 2002 protects the certain interest of those in actual occupation. Williams and Glyn's Bank and Boland established that a spouse can have overriding rights due to the actual occupation. In Choker vs. Choker, the court held that even if the legal title was in someone else's name, the actual occupation can confer the rights. The Bianca rights may be substantial if she can show the actual occupation and a beneficial interest. Polly may need to negotiate with a Bianca as her occupation could potentially override a Polly's title under the principle established in the above cases. Occupancy and belongings. Bianca, as Vern's daughter, claims to have lived at the retreat since Vern purchased it. Under the registered land law, her rights and interests could fall under the provisions of the Land Registration Act 2002. Since Bianca is an actual occupation of the property, her rights may be protected under the Section 29 LRA 2002, which state that a purchaser is bound by the interest of which they have the actual knowledge or that are protected by registration. They're given a Bianca assertion of living there consistently. Her rights could be seen as a overriding interest under Schedule 3 of the LRA 2002, especially since Pali did not inspect the property prior to the purchase. In Williams and Glenn's Bank vs. Boland case, the court held that the spouse's interest in the family home could not be disregarded by a purchaser who had not taken reasonable steps to ascertain any existing interest. Same way, similarly, the Choker Choker demonstrate that actual occupation can create a binding interest even if not formally registered. The same case we have seen above, the Williams and Glen Bank versus Boland and City Permanent Building Society versus Miller highlight that a spouse or a partner living in a property can claim rights through actual occupation, even if not explicitly stated in the register. We are moving to the last section, how the advice will differ if it is an unregistered land law. If Pali's purchase was governed entirely by unregistered land law, the analysis changes significantly. The Walter's right under the unregistered land law, a doctrine of notices applies. If Walter right was known or should have been discovered through reasonable inquiry, like constructive notice, Polly might still be bound by it. Claims lease, similar to the registered land, claims lease would still bind a Polly as an equitable interest because of his possession. However, a lack of registration does not affect its enforceability. What about a Bianca occupation when it is unregistered land? A Bianca right might be less secure. The doctrine of notice means that if Polly had no actual notice of Bianca's occupation, she might not be bound. However, if Bianca occupancy was known or could have been discovered by Polly, she could have still claimed the rights under the doctrine of notice. Unregistered land consideration continued like good root of title. In unregistered land, Polly would need to establish a good root of title, meaning she would have to trace back to the previous owner title without any gaps. If Bianca had been living there, her right would need to be disclosed. Actual occupation without registration, the doctrine of notice would apply, meaning a party would be responsible for discovering the interest through enquiries. If Bianca was in occupation, the party should have made enquiries to establish her rights. Easement rights, Walter's rights would still need to be established through documentary evidence rather than being assumed as overriding. Equitable interest, Bianca and claim could potentially assert equitable interest based on their occupation and lease. A doctrine of notice would apply, meaning a party could be bound by the interest she failed to investigate. In Chalker vs. Chalker, the court found that an unregistered equitable interest could bind a purchaser without registration if the purchaser had a notice. So, doctrine of notice, when under the unregistered land law, the doctrine of notice would come into play if Pali had a constructive notice of Beyond's claim due to her visible occupation. She might be bound by it. This is supported by the principle outlined in City of London BS as a flag, which emphasizes that equitable interest can bind subsequent purchasers if the purchaser has a knowledge of those interests. Section 27.2 of LPA 1925 highlights that the equitable interest can be binding if the purchaser has not made proper inquiries. Section 33.5 of the Family Act 1996 specify that a spouse or partner's rights can affect the property ownership, further complicating Polly's situation if Bianca claims right as a dependent. In Thompson versus Foy illustrate how a purchaser's failure to inquire about the actual occupation can lead to being bound by the equitable interest. A link lending versus Bustard indicates that a purchaser may be deemed to have a constructive notice by failing to investigate the circumstances of a person in occupation. So we are coming to the conclusion a party must be recognized that while she purchased the freehold title, various rights may still affect her ownership. Walter case, the potentially unenforceable if unregistered. A claim case, likely enforceable due to the possession. A Bianca's case, a right depends on notice and actual occupation. Under the registered land law, the police should conduct thorough due diligence to assess the Bianca rights. If Bianca occupation is deemed significant, her rights might be enforceable against Pali under the LRA 2002. Pali may need to negotiate with Bianca regarding her belongings or seek formal eviction if necessary. A Pali's position under the registered land law is somewhat protected by the register, but she must still address the rights of the Walter claimant Bianca. Each of these parties could have significant claims based on the principle of overriding interest and the actual occupation. If it is under the unregistered land law, the Polly could be at the risk of being bound by Beyond's right due to her actual occupation. A Polly should have made inquiries about Bianca's presence and rights, and her failure to do so may mean she cannot evict Bianca without addressing her rights first. A Polly's obligation would be much stricter, requiring her to investigate thoroughly and ensure she has a clear title free from the claims. Hope it is very useful for you. Thank you.